It's Dodger's first character from Nebula Jazz.
Oh, okay.
It's a slime. It's a handsome slime boy. So, hi everybody. We are some of the cast of the many, many roleplay shows that have existed at twitch.tv/itmejp over the years. I wanted to get us together, the folks who would be here, to just kind of hang out and shoot the shit and talk about roleplay. Because we've been doing this a while now. I think, what was the fourth anniversary was South?
Yeah, we're coming up on the 5th in February. Yeah, 5 years.
5 years. So yeah, we've done innumerable amounts of role playing in that 5 years, and I thought that it would be cool for us to come and do a little thing. And apparently PAX also thought so, and they gave us this enormous stage on which to do it.
Look at these lights too. I just feel so
well lit.
I mean,
I can't see the crowd at all. It's just
Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
we can't see you. There might be 5 of you in the audience. It's like Eugene and the rest of the front row. But thanks, Slimer. So yeah, for those of you who may not know us, maybe you're watching on the PAX stream. We'll introduce ourselves. I'll get JP to talk a little bit about what roleplay is, and then we'll just hang out. I've got some questions for these guys, and I'm sure they have some stuff they want to talk about. My favorite PC to kill, sitting to my right.
Hi.
Max, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you?
I'm Max Gonzalez, constantly a corpse. I go by gassymexican online. Some of you guys might know my stuff, maybe not. But I've been doing online content with video games in one form or another for the last 7-8 years. And I started doing how I got introduced to just role-playing in general was actually pretty late compared to a lot of people that grew up doing it and things of that nature. I didn't really have friends that did it, and I knew it was a thing, but I didn't know the specifics and the intricacies of what it was and how fun it could actually be. So I started doing a little bit of Pathfinder just with a group locally, and that was my first introduction. And then JP asked me to do some role-play in D&D with West Marches, and I played a character called Shialbaz on there, who was like a senile old wizard who was really fun to play. And that was when I was first, it clicked. I was like, oh, this is what this can be. So fortunately, he's asked me to come back and do different stuff, and doing Court of Swords now as a main cast member, and going through a bunch of characters. And who knows, it might be more characters depending on how things go. But yeah, I've had a blast.
Yeah.
Little known fact about Max, unlike most humans who only have the standard array of senses, Max has a special ability.
Yes.
He's at any moment capable of detecting
I can
danger.
detect danger at any given moment.
Fantastic. Yeah, a little oversensitive on the danger sense, though, I think. Let's jump on to the other far side. Zekiel.
Hi, guys. I don't know if there's an easy way to turn the monitors up so I can hear these guys more easily. I'm just making a note if there is a way. I can hear them, but it's quiet. Anyway, hi, Ezekiel III. I've been playing on roleplay since the West Marches, since now. Kellen came first, right?
what then?
Kellen Wildlight came before Shaldrick and Maldrick? Or was it Shaldrick and Maldrick was in the middle?
You died first, I think, with Ko, as that dwarf, and then you made Kellen.
This thing that you're witnessing right now it's one of my favorite things about doing role-playing games on the internet. We don't have to remember shit because you'll do it for us.
Yeah.
It's so good. Thank you for that.
There's definitely a lot of that. Well, it's also because, if you get involved in different role-playing things, you'll play different characters at different time periods and that kind of thing. Because when a little background history for me, I actually told this story last night. How I started into role-playing was into, I think my sophomore or junior year of high school. I'd always wanted to role-play. I always wanted to play Dungeons & Dragons, and I didn't know anybody who did it. And I really wanted to. I had all the books. I read them. I had, like I was saying, talking to somebody, I had the Ruins of Undermountain. I had, all these systems and books and shit, but no one to play with. And eventually... if you guys know Sour Kool-Aid Show, DP, he kind of jumped me into Dungeons & Dragons, and I started playing by sneaking out of my house at 15, 16 years old to go play Dungeons and Dragons until like the wee hours of the morning till like dawn, and then sneak back in.
Can you just imagine like Zeke getting caught coming home?
I was
like,
gonna say, did
like,
you get caught?
Mom, yeah, mom being like, Ezekiel, where were you? And he's like, I know where. Were you? Were you out playing Dungeons and Dragons? No, I was smoking.
Yeah, no.
I was smoking cigarettes. Mom.
No,
All
that's
right.
almost exactly what happened. Like, I snuck back in and he caught me one time. My dad caught me one time, and he goes, "The f were you doing out there? What were you doing? Were you doing drugs?" Like, nothing that cool. I was not partying or doing drugs or hitting on women. I was a 4th level conjuring wizard. And
So you were
named
doing
Lothariel.
drugs then?
You were doing drugs and roleplay, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, my rogue he's a real badass.
No, and that's the thing. Like, I had like a fucking robe that I dressed like because I was
geez.
I was a wizard. I was so into it. But was my first foray into role playing, and then a long hiatus until JP came around and was like, "Dude, you want to do this thing?" And I was like, "Yes, I do. That's the only thing I want to do." And so here I am, and I've been on many different shows, and got the opportunity to play lots of different characters.
You were on Drop Frames first before you were on Roleplay, right? Is that how that started? Or were you on Roleplay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We have a communal problem with chronology here.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It's all a blur at some point. It just all blurs together.
It's fine. So for me, I got my start in roleplay well after I got my start in role playing. I've been playing D&D since I was like 10. I'm pretty sure that I was born clutching a 20-sided die in my tiny fat palm. But yeah, I started playing D&D when I was 10. Me and my brother and a friend of mine tried to muddle our way through AD&D. But I've been on roleplay since a little before Swan Song, I guess. We did a one-shot right after 5e came out, which was sort of my like audition.
Oh yeah, that was the right.
Yeah, and I killed all of you. Well, DMs don't kill people, bugbears kill people.
I remember that. Yeah.
And then we started Swan Song, and I've run a ton of shows since then, both one-shots and campaigns. I'm also the GM in residence for Roll20, so I've got 2 campaigns that I run over there. My whole internet existence is predicated on tabletop RPGs. So I also wrote one. I'm the co-author of Dungeon World, so you probably recognize me from one of those many things.
Yeah, on sale here, over there.
Yeah,
somewhere.
totally. Go and buy. Get up now. Go and buy it. The hall is open for another hour.
I was flipping through it a little bit before. I was like, oh, this is a legit book.
Yeah,
Hey,
did
look
you
at
buy it?
that.
Did you buy it?
I did not buy it. I
Fucking
did
were
not.
gonna-
browser.
We were thinking about buying them out, but then I would feel bad because we're just assholes buying them out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no one else would be able to get them then.
Start your own booth somewhere else.
Yeah.
Mark it up.
Toyed with the
$10.
idea of coming over and be like, hey, Adam, you sold out of your book. I mean, we bought them. We were the one that bought them.
Listen, man, all that matters to me is money in the bank.
No, I did want to get one, but I was worried about it getting all bent up and stuff. And
Yeah.
stuff. I get, like anybody else that lives on the internet, you just Amazon it to yourself.
Yeah. So the reason really that we're all here, the whole reason all this is possible is this fellow over here, who you might recognize. Give us the rundown, JP, about roleplay and your part in it and role-playing games, because it's like your overlap is basically 1-to-1 with roleplay and RPGs, more or less, right?
Yeah, for the most part. I played when I was in high school with my brother, who was 18 or 19 at the time, playing with a bunch of like 20-year-olds, his boss. They didn't like me very much, so I died in the first session. And after that, I didn't really touch the games again until February or the start of, I think, 2013 with Jeff, Neil, Jen, and Ryan Moore. And we kind of all knew each other thanks to MLG and esports and stuff like that. Or the 4 of us did. We basically just tweeted out like, hey, are there any DMs that want to come and DM for us? And Neil ran a website called SE2 Ratings, which was a website that rated replays for StarCraft 2. And he ended up DMing for us. And I don't know how many episodes. I think probably the original plus Solum was probably around 70 episodes. It kind of just spun off from there. We ended up doing Dark Heresy with Total Biscuit, and that's where Steven came in. We did that for 20 or so episodes, and Steven did some other shows. That's when you came into play, like you said. I don't remember that 5e game. That was right around when 5e came out. I remember that was the first one.
Yeah, we did a little like video about 5e, Steven and I, and then we did that one shot. And I can't remember if it was like right when Swan Song was starting or right before it. But
I think that was kind of the precursor to Swan Song. 'Cause then afterwards we talked, and what do you want to run? It was kind of that conversation. But yeah, so been going almost 5 years now. That'll be on February the 18th, coming up next year. Yeah, then before that I worked on esports stuff, and I'm just a streamer as well and do a bunch of other shows like Drop Frames.
So what's the difference, the biggest difference for you between those early weeks of doing role play and like now? 'Cause it's pretty different.
It was purely a passion project back then, and now it's a full-time job, but still a passion project at the same time. We have things like the Patreon now, which take up a lot of time, but allow us to do things like this, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to fly you guys out here and put you all up in hotel rooms and all that stuff and do a party like we did last night. But yeah, I think it transitioned into a full-time job, more than I ever thought it would, for sure. But that's probably the biggest difference. I think at the base level, the game's still the same.
Yeah. Yeah. So for Zeke and Max, for you guys, do you find that, because obviously you both have like audiences of your own in your own channels and stuff, do people ask you questions about your D&D characters? Do they talk about D&D in that space at all, or are they very different for you?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely comes up here and there. There's people, more than I thought from my community, that like actually follow the D&D stuff, and they're people that have been watching my stuff for a while. And I'm like, oh, you know who Berg is, you know, and they'll talk about like different things like that. So it's really cool for me. One of the biggest reasons why I got into it and I still love doing it is because it allows me to give my community and my viewers a different kind of content. For me, like I love doing different character stuff, and obviously I like doing voices and different impressions and things like that. That goes back to me being a kid, like, so it fills that void. But for my viewers, it gives them something other than just me playing a video game and doing my normal shtick or whatever. They get to see a different type of content that they wouldn't have been able to see. So, and also follow up to JP's thing. We said, what's different? He's just playing with such great role players. The new cast, really great. Having Zeke on. No, but that's where my like kind of like passion for it comes through is. And it's fun to see kind of the fruits of that labor pop up here and there in the stream when people are actually talking about stuff. And more so lately, actually, for some reason, people are finding out about it from my stream because I've got a command in there and stuff, and I talk about it more frequently. So there's some more people that either haven't even considered playing, roleplay or seeing a roleplay show that are now starting to consider it.
Yeah. Zeke, what about you?
Yes. I do a lot of, I've got my fingers in a lot of different pies, Twitch-wise. Like I do drop frames, I do hosting gigs and this and that. But I think what makes me the most proud or gives me the most joy is when someone comes over to my channel, to my personal channel, and says, hey, I'm only stopping in here because I saw you on RollPlay. Because that, honestly, of all the Twitch stuff, like role-playing is my favorite thing to do. If I could do that all the time, I would. Being a streamer, people ask like, "Hey, what's your favorite game series or what's your favorite game to play?" And I often have to say like, if you don't count like Dungeons and Dragons or role playing, then this. But my favorite game is always to role play because it fits me so well. It feels like what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
But I love it when people come over and like, dude, I saw you on Blades in the Dark. I saw Kellen Wildlight do his I'm a Man thing, or, that kind of stuff, I saw, like, it was so funny when you died, when you're Ko's brother and you died because you blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, it's shitty of you to say that, but thank you for being here, Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, yes, there's definitely some bleed over, and I notice it, and it warms my heart to see, like, this whole resurgence of what I've, been doing since I was in high school become something that I can do as part of my living.
Yeah.
So something that I really, I've been really excited, for folks who don't know or who haven't been following Court of Swords, it's the D&D show that JP and I and Max and Dan have been running with various guests. We just actually had Zeke do his first few episodes. And I was really excited about having the two of you, especially on the show, because I think that as far as thinking about characterization, even in a game like D&D, you guys put a special effort into that process. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what you think about when you make a character and what kinds of choices you make. Because Max, especially, I know you have a kind of a backwards approach to making your character.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know how a lot of people make their characters and stuff. Because again, I'm not super I didn't grow up with roleplay and doing D&D and stuff like that. So for me, it always stems from I can get a general idea of what the character is going to be about. and I start with the voice usually, and it ties in. I try to make the voice mimic what that character. So I guess it doesn't always start with the voice. It goes hand in hand with the voice, and also just like the little bit, like the little hook that I want. So for like Thorn, like I wanted him to be kind of like from the recent Primordial arc of Court of Swords. I wanted him to be kind of like a little bit of a dick. He's kind of dubious. He's precocious. He's a little bit of a coward himself, but he talks a lot. So then that became like, all right, well, maybe sort of like a New English, like an Eastern sort of accent, not like Eastern, Far Eastern, but yeah. So it starts with there. I think of like different like moods and like personality I want to convey, and then I start going through my Rolodex in my head of different voice types and things, and that's what I love personally.
Yeah, well, I think that's so fascinating because I think, like, for the most part, when people make characters, especially in D&D, there's a protocol in the book that tells you where to start, right?
Yeah.
You start by thinking about your class and your race, and then most people, I would say, build the voice into that. But it's really cool to see that you're doing it almost backwards, in that the character exists as an idea first, and then you build the class and race around that.
I think I like it better the way I do it, just because it allows me to not fall so much into like the classic stereotypes of what this class and whatever sounds like. Sometimes it does happen to like sound like someone else, or it does just fit that stereotypically. But other times I think it allows me to unknowingly maybe even like make a character within the class and whatever that is a little more unique than it might otherwise be. But that's how it always starts for me, because it's easier for me to picture and try to pretend to be somebody when I'm just outwardly talking. So like when I prepare for a character or whatever, I'll be around the house just talking to myself the whole time. And I think a lot of people do that try to do like different voices and stuff, but that's what I do. And I'll keep tweaking it and be like, that's no good. That sounds horrible. Everyone's gonna judge you. And I like to try to make it like each character sound different and unique. Of course, obviously you can only do so many different voices, but I love that challenge of like, all right, we'll see if we can do something completely different this time, So.
Right. Yeah, well, because we have video and we have the map and everything available in the stream. JP, obviously, I know you agree that audio is the most important component of what we do.
Yeah.
So it's cool that you think about the voice so much as the primary motivator for your character.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. And for people too, like we were talking last night with some of the people that just listen to the MP3s and stuff. That I love that hearing that people are like utilizing the MP3s out there so much, because then it makes me even want to just go even further with that. And if I'm feeling like maybe I'm feeling a little like down and not super into roleplay, but remembering that, I'm just like, no, I'm gonna bring it. I'm gonna bring 110%.
Yeah, totally. So Zeke, when you were making your new character for Court of Swords, what was the process for you, like coming up with that character?
Whenever I start a new character, specifically in D&D, because I know that system and I know like what goes into like starting up a character. I work forwards from the dice roll, from the stat rolls, because I view like a character as like a block of marble, and then a strength roll, a con roll, the dex roll, the int roll. That chips away little pieces of the thing, and like if the con roll is low, then probably a little bit more frail. Strength roll is high, probably a little like lean muscle. Dex roll probably has like some like. Looks like Tone and Bruce Lee kind of stuff going on, and that starts it for me for sure. And I like that because it's random. It's more randomized. So if I go with someone with like Halamat, if I go with someone that has a high charisma and high dexterity but low strength, it gives like a lithe, like really good looking it creates an image in my head. And then the class and race chip more away at that marble until I have like a basic gist, a skeleton of what I want, and then all of the character that I add to it, the voice that I give it, or whatever is just the final like polishing of that marble statue of the character that I've made. And just like Adam and I have talked about this, Max just said it, like I'll putter around my house like. I did that. I've done that for every character I've done on RollPlay. Put around my house and just like say things in the character. Like I played around with Kalimat, like having like trying to like do a faux Middle Eastern Arabic kind of an accent with like the roll of the R's and stuff like that. Didn't feel right coming off the tongue and stuff like that. So I kind of dialed that back and just did more of like a smooth snake oil kind of a salesman kind of a person. And everything is said with a smile. So I would walk around my house and talk like this, and then add some some fluidity to it, and that goes on for like however long I had and be like until I like from when I rolled to the first day of tweaking how the speech patterns and stuff like that. And I was just sitting on my toilet talking in the voice, going through my Twitter and shit like that. Like it's such
You just
a
read
joy.
tweets in the voice.
Do tweets in the voice.
Should record that next time. And
Oh my God, I'm gonna
No,
do
and
that.
I think I sung that fucking 2-line song from the first episode. I think I sung that like 40 times just outside, like, gotta get it right, gotta make it sound right, make it and not overdo it, whatever. But yeah, a lot goes into it.
I'm gonna steal that idea. I'm gonna do a YouTube video where I just read tweets
I
in
was just
Dr.
gonna say,
Glory
yeah.
voice.
Yeah.
Like reading the mean tweets or whatever.
Yeah, totally.
Reading mean chat things like in the characters.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So, JP, I wanted to get these guys' input first because I feel like having made hands down more characters than anybody else in roleplay,
Oh yeah.
maybe your approach is a little different.
Yeah.
How do you make a character or three?
I'm trying to think how many characters I've actually made on all the shows combined. It's probably triple digits, I would think.
Yeah, it doesn't like certainly.
If you include the
doesn't.
one shot and stuff like, or the one shots and stuff like that, it's probably triple digits. It depends on the mood that I'm in. It really does. For the most recent one, it was fun having Zeke on the show, or Zeke kind of coming into the show the same time I was with a new character, because I know he was going to approach it the way that he just described. I could play with that, and kind of work together with some sort of backstory, come
Yes.
together and figure that out, which is a lot of fun.
I love the opportunities to if you're creating characters at the same time, like when Ko and I were brothers, like
Yeah, you would
you and
go
I
back
had
and
like a business relationship or whatever, something like that. I
Right,
love
right.
the opportunities that you can do that.
Yeah, but when it's just starting off in a show, sometimes I have an idea and I want to play a specific character. Sometimes I have no ideas and I try to see what everyone else is going to play and kind of fill in terms of if we need a charismatic person, I'll play someone that's kind of based around that stat-wise. And then voice-wise, it's kind of just whatever. Now I've started messing around and losing the accent and trying to mess around with just different ways of talking.
Yeah.
And that's obviously more viewable with the most recent character where I just talk slower. But yeah, I think for 100+ characters, it's getting to where I just rely on the dice. And it's just completely random.
Yeah.
And that keeps it fun. It keeps it interesting.
Well, there's a fair bit of what haven't I played yet, like of
Oh, yeah.
all of,
Yeah,
of
yeah.
all the people on the various shows.
Well,
I feel like
I
you're
tried
the
to play a
most-
bard, and then somehow it died before I could even put clothes on.
How
I don't
did
know.
that happen?
True.
I don't.
That was weird.
He died like he lived, naked
Yeah.
and covered in slime.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's the thing. Like of everybody, when a new supplement for D&D comes out, you're the most excited because you're like, look at all this shit I haven't played yet.
Oh yeah, more stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which
for
is
sure.
which is really cool. So I think we've been thinking. I know you and I have talked a little bit about this. We've been thinking a lot about like chemistry, right? Of like the way that different people interact in a role playing game. How important is that when you're casting like a new show? Like when we started Nebula Jazz, or when you put Blades together, or whatever. Even when we do a one shot, what are the factors that go into it, and how important are the relationships that that those people have with each other?
It really just depends on the show. Sometimes I kind of throw 4 people that you never would expect to be in the same room at any point in time. And that's always kind of fun to see them work together in that regard. Other times I get people like Zeke, who I know is going to work well because he's friends with Max and friends with Dan, and we've kind of all known each other for 2 or 3 years now. It really just depends on more who's available and who's willing to jump into the show. And if I know someone's not going to work well with someone else, I'll either approach them and say like, hey, how do you feel about working with this person? Is that going to be okay? Do you think you think that'd be fun? You think there's like chemistry there? And hopefully most of the time everyone's real honest, and they'll say, I don't know if there'd be too much chemistry. We've had some whatever in the past, and other times like, oh yeah, that'd be great. He's super fun to work with. We've worked great in the past. But yeah, I think that's something that we've learned across all of the shows that we're trying out now is to keep a show running as much as possible, instead of just doing like, all right, we're cutting off after 30 episodes and that's that. So with Court of Swords, we're on 52 right now, and we'll see where we go with that.
Yeah, I've really the irony. The longest running show is the one where the characters die the most often.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it keeps it fresh.
It does,
But
yeah, it has.
The other funny thing is there was a community post on our site, and they described kind of the first 50 episodes and put it in context of like, you know, when we first started off the show, that's kind of like the precursor to everything, right? So if you compare it to like Game of Thrones, that's like the North being shown for a second, the Necromancer, and eventually that might be the end of the show when it's like that thing taking over the rest of the world, in a sense. And after reading that,
I did
really
all
cool.
of that on purpose. I'm a genius.
Yeah, well, they took like every single arc and said like, well, this is this arc, and it's important because it introduces this, but then you kind of don't go back to that. And I think it's awesome that Berg has been along through most of that because he's kind of the main linchpin of everything, Court of Swords wise.
Yeah.
And if he would have died off, then there wouldn't be that thoroughfare between everything.
So don't kill Berg. No, you can. We've talked about it too, like how Berg is like Berg the Undying now, and that just kind of happened because he was the one that just survived. But what would happen if Berg like did die? And if he did die, like personally, me as the character the player that plays that character, like he's done so much shit where it's there's like I'd be okay with it. honestly.
Berg's last words are going to be like, finally.
Yeah, exactly. Just be sweet release. Like, just be gone and be okay with it. But yeah, it's interesting.
I mean,
How long?
the thing that I'm finding really interesting about that character is, and the arc of the show, is that the show has been, up until relatively recently, like fairly dark, not just in terms of what's happening, but in terms of the content, because our protagonist is someone to whom bad things happen all the time.
Right.
And it's been really interesting because for me as a GM, I've said lots of times, my favorite thing, the worst thing I can do to you isn't kill you, it's make your life miserable. And Berg has been just so good for that. Like, the fact that you're playing a very survivable character type, right? Barbarians are very hard to kill. You can recoup your own hit points because of this magic stuff.
Yeah, especially with the magic thing.
It's given me all these opportunities to be like, well, I'm not going to kill you, but like, what if you had a rock for an arm? What if your girlfriend was dead?
Yeah.
We didn't even get to the girlfriend stage, right?
Yeah.
It was just like, hey, we like each other.
I see a ship and I sink it, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
I can't.
You just blast it with a bunch of cannons.
Yeah, I got those guns. But yeah, it's fascinating watching that happen, and there is like an unpredictability to it that as you play through these games, you might have an idea of where a character might go, or you might have an idea of where a narrative or plot thread might go, but it might get away from you, especially if you're playing a game like D&D, which lives on this plateau of chaos where you can't really predict moment to moment if someone's going to live or die. And to that effect, like what's a moment from a show that this is a question for anybody if some jumps to mind, but what's a moment on a show that like surprised you, that after it happened you're like whoa, I didn't expect that? Because I can think of a few, but I'm curious what you guys, if you have. Tell us about this character.
Yeah, do I need to leave the panel for a second so you don't kill me?
Yeah, Wester. Like, Wester was what was he, the second character that I made? I can't remember. It was Velimir, and then I think Wester. I think.
Second
There's
or
been some.
third, yeah.
There's been Velimir, Wester, Volnok, now Berg, and then there was Thorn, just for the
So probably second, yeah.
Yeah, I think he was the second one. But I was so stoked to play Wester. I was like, yeah, he's going to be this kind of like big guy. He's got a little bit of a British accent kind of going on, but he's like tough too. I had so much plans for his like backstory and stuff. Like I didn't like write it all down, but it was one of those characters you're like, oh, nice.
Well, like
cool.
you were saying, you put a lot of thought into building the character and getting an idea of what that character is like.
Yeah, with any character, I like to think, especially now, like what's it called? Zeke was saying, it's like you look at it like a blank piece of marble. Even more so now with the case study of Berg. Berg was just like, all right, he's dumb. He's a half-orc. His name's Berg. Let's do it. But with Wester, yeah, I was super excited. I just did not think that he was going to die in the first thing, especially with his neck getting snapped.
The things we love take from us so soon.
But there's been plenty. I'm curious to see what JP or you think was a moment.
I think for me, it was probably in Swan Song, and it didn't have to do with character death, but it had to do with death in general. When it was during the live show, when Higgs called, what was the female's name?
Rajani?
Yeah, where I called Reggiani, and it went to voicemail, but you had skipped 100 years forward, and so I was just leaving a message to a dead person. And that moment, for whatever reason, was super impactful, more than actually dying in a game.
Right.
Because it was kind of like just coming to terms with like other people's death. It was real.
Yeah.
And especially at the very end where you had kind of the message play or whatever. that was cool.
What's great
I enjoyed
about that as your moment is that it's the same character who in the first episode was like, I'm gonna call my best friend Randy. He'll help me out.
Yeah. Then
And then you're like, no loose ends, Randy.
yeah. Yeah.
It just goes to show that it only takes several hundred years to become a decent person.
Yeah. Character growth does occur if you want it to or not. Do you have any moments that surprised you?
Yeah, there definitely surprised me when I brought the idea up to in Blades in the Dark. When I brought the idea up to Anne and and John, and I said, "This is kind of what I want Aldo's attachment to be, and I want to float this idea to you, John, and to you, Anne, to see if we can make something like this happen." And I talked about the diary, and I talked about like that kind of thing, and I was not sure if Anne would run with it, or want to be part of it, or if John would just have to role play or whatever. What really surprised me is how not that Anne did it, but how well we connected on that particular part and those particular moments.
There are a lot of fans I know that consider that to be like the high point of like role playing in all of the 5 years of stuff we've been doing.
I would agree.
Like I was honestly like choked up, but like got like misty eyed and stuff like that during like even talking about it right now is getting me all like, you know, like that. It just surprised me. I don't know about you guys, but it's always surprising to me to find someone who goes as deep into something as you do, and to find them like you're diving down like, you know, 300 feet deep into the ocean, and then someone else is there waving at you going, hey, well, I'm here too.
Right.
Whoa, what the fuck? That's awesome.
The ocean is a metaphor for feelings, just so we're
Yeah.
all we're on.
Well, or feelings or deep into character, like willing, because that is some of the most vulnerable you ever get, is when you really get into character.
Totally. I think from like my point of view in terms of watching the show as a producer behind the scenes, I think both of you went into that not expecting any of that to happen, and then it started, and you guys it got real fucking serious
It felt,
out of nowhere, and I was.
It felt a little bit
surprised.
like the two of you were playing like emotional chicken, where you're like,
Yeah.
well, what if I say this, and then what? And you're like, oh yeah, I got something for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I think the best part about it was that she had surprises for me.
Oh,
this
yeah. She
idea
thought
that
about it,
I came up with, she ran with it, and it surprised me with shit, and I went, what? I had no idea that you were gonna say stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's crazy too, because that was Anne's like basically first time ever role playing, and she just went with it, which is pretty fucking cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most people won't let their guard down at all.
Yeah.
When it comes to role playing, and for her to just dive into that was crazy. It was great.
My moment of surprise was like dozens of episodes long. It was called Mirrorshades. And like I honestly have never said okay so many times as I did in that show. Like from the get-go, the core concept of the game is one thing, and within 2 episodes the show had veered wildly in another direction. And every episode there was something, whether it was Wheat and Dodger suddenly breaking out in song at a like karaoke bar in fictional Japan.
That was great.
Or like everything Caitlin ever did in that show, every decision that she made, I was like, can we take a break? So, and that, I mean, to me, that stuff is super valuable. Like I think often as the Dungeon Master, there's this expectation that you know everything already, and that the only surprise you get is how the players go through the things that you've made for them, right? You build the obstacle course, and your only question is like, can they get through it, or how quickly? But with a game like Mirrorshades, and I think Nebula Jazz too, though I expected Nebula Jazz to be a shit show, with Mirrorshades, every day that we played, every episode, I was getting yanked in another weird direction and having to chase the players, and I think it made for a really exciting experience, but like harrowing. Like just like completely harrowing, not knowing at any moment what was going to happen, which was really fun. And I think to your point, Zeke, like that feeling of engaging with another player or engaging with the group, or at least in my experience, engaging with the audience after an episode, like the Q&A threads that we do are therapeutic for me, because if we've had an intense episode or something like intense happened, I can go to this other space and be like, so how about that episode? And people are responding in the same way, and so it can kind of like ease me out of it. But I think that feeling, that connectedness to the narrative, is what makes role-playing games as like viewable media so exciting and so interesting. Like I think that's why people watch.
Maybe,
right?
yeah.
I think a big portion of them do, yeah.
Yeah, our audience is when compared to the ACK Incs. or the Critical Roles or anything, it's an interesting audience for me to look at, in the sense that our audience is more a collective of or a collective of everyone else from other video game streams watching RPGs for the first time.
Yes.
Whereas a lot of, I don't have any basis, it's just a thought of like Critical Role or ACK Inc. or any other misclicks, whichever show, are like RPG fans watching an RPG show. They understand it a little bit better.
Yeah.
So that's always fun to get the video game people applied into the world of tabletop gaming for the first
I will
time.
never ever get tired of seeing in chat, where's the game?
Yeah.
Where's the game?
Max was bringing up something I love seeing someone will say that. It's usually a lot cruder and with more curse words thrown
What
about.
the fuck am I watching?
Yeah, from the front page. And then, like 10 minutes later, they're like, well, why doesn't he just hit him with his fucking sword? Like, just use the sword, you idiot. Just do that.
That is a
And
good
they get
idea.
into
Yes.
it.
Just hit him with the sword.
You're just like, come on, come
yeah.
on with us, buddy. You're gonna love this.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's what's fun, is watching those people become the like, I cry every time. Like people,
Oh,
the
yeah.
people who are like, tell me about your character.
Yeah.
Where's he from?
That stuff's really cool. And I think a lot of our viewership also comes from, or viewers in terms of a community, come from the front page and they kind of stick around. But we have a really old community, so most of the people that I met kind of at the party last night and in general will say, like, I've watched X show, which ran for 30 episodes, and I've watched a little bit of this, but we have like 3,000 plus VODs on YouTube or something right now, which
It's a lot.
is
Yeah, I'm gonna start watching roleplay, and I'll finish when I'm dead.
Yeah, there's 200 hours of Court of Swords alone, and that's one of our most recent shows.
Well, the big like
Which is
water,
crazy.
the big watermark for Swan Song was when we had more hours of content than Star Trek: The Next Generation.
That's a fun stat.
Jeez.
That's a
It's
fun
like,
stat.
suck it, Roddenberry.
Yeah,
Wow.
that was 53 episodes if you count one shots in there. Plus
Yeah, I mean,
live
like that's the
show.
thing. Most TV shows aren't 4 hours long.
Yeah. And I think that's also a double-edged sword, because like for new viewers, they step in, they're like, where the fuck do I start? Like, this is
Yeah,
way too much content.
we're like anime that way, where you're like,
Yeah,
how many
yeah.
episodes are there? That's cool. I'm gonna go watch Akira again.
Yeah.
Well, that's funny that you mentioned that the whole time sync thing, because I came from a role playing background. I played the same character for like 6 years or something like that,
Which is great.
And this is before Twitch or Justin TV, anything. And our role play sessions were at the very minimum 6 hours long, if not
Yeah.
8 to 10 to 12 hours long,
We've talked about
depending
that
on the night or the adventure they were on or whatever. And we would like have a ritual of stocking up beforehand and getting all of the things we need, like treats and snacks and dinner and all this kind of stuff. And we play for hours and hours. And that's why I was like, are you sure it's gonna, like, this role-playing thing is gonna translate? I mean, 4 hours is not a lot of time.
We've talked about that a lot. I think the live shows being 8 hours makes sense, but after those 8 hours,
I
especially-
black out.
Yeah, after being
that
on
time.
camera, it's so much different than like playing a tabletop RPG is exhausting afterwards.
Yeah.
But being on camera and being like, all right, I got to say something funny or I got to be something interesting soon, like that critical thinking for nonstop 8 hours is exhausting.
I bet.
After the Nebula Jazz show, I remember ending the Patreon talk and then waking up in my bed in Vancouver 3 days later.
Yeah.
I still haven't. I need to recover that lost time.
And I think sometimes the shows can be a little bit slow too, just depending on what's happening. Not to say that the content is bad or they're not having a fun time, but it's just the movement or the pace of the show is a little slow. But the only one that I could really ever think about potentially making longer would be Court of Swords.
Yeah.
Because some of those fights are taking 2 hours.
Well, wait till we're like level 12, dude.
Oh yeah, I know it'll be a little bit crazy. So yeah, that's always something I'm thinking about in terms of like, well,
Well, I think.
do we need to make it so it's 2 hours and then a break? And
Yeah, I
and you get
feel
more
like
continuous. I don't know.
there's this assumption, and I don't know if this is just like how it happened. I know that Skype has a hand in this, but the idea
Well,
of
Skype is the originator of why our shows are 4 hours.
yeah, the idea of four players, 4 hours. That's an episode of the show. Yeah, it came from the fact that Skype would, God bless
Skype
its
crapped out at
shitty heart.
6 or more people. It had a limit of 4 hours per call, and the call had to be reset.
Yeah.
Those restrictions aren't in place anymore, but it's just kind of, it makes sense. Plus, getting someone in like content creation or a stream or anything to devote more time than that is
Yeah, I was going to say it's
crazy.
already a lot of time for just in general, because most of the people that we have on these shows, like myself, Zeke, whatever, are other content creators that have their own schedule and all that. And dedicating 4 hours for one day doesn't sound like a lot on paper, but when you're doing a bunch of different stuff, it becomes like scheduling conflicts, and that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was Skype that did that. 4 hours.
Yep. It used to be 4 hours Skype call.
I just thought it was a nice in between of
you
like
go-
8 hours to
If you go back and watch some of the original like Roleplay Legacy VODs, multiple times in hour 4, everyone's cam just goes away and it's audio only. And then we're kind of like, all right, well.
Chat shouting 10 minutes into part 4. Reset the call. Reset the call.
Yeah, I
reset
remember
the
that,
call is
yeah.
kind of a big thing, yeah. So.
Yeah. Cool. Do you guys want to do Q&A? We're going to run out of
Yeah.
time if we don't get started now. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do people have questions? Do you have things you want to know? I
Yeah.
see some slight
Go right
There are
ahead.
of
two
mics.
microphones
There's
on either
mics.
sides here if you
We'll
want to
start
line
off
up.
and say Dark Heresy's never coming back. West March is
No.
probably never coming back.
Yeah.
Blades, who knows? Am I missing anything?
Not that I'm sure someone will remind us of it.
Okay.
We've forgotten.
That's off the top of my head. Let's see if there's anything else.
Okay.
Who wants to go first?
Start on this side.
Jump to the
All
left.
right. Hi, my name's Kelvin. Roleplay Legacy, if you don't remember the shirt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do.
Eugene was in the way. We couldn't see the shirt.
Original. Throughout all of your role playing as characters, has there been any events that made you learn how to improve playing your own character or D&D in general throughout the time that you have played? Are there any like
Yeah,
specific
Max, the
events?
dying over and over and over make you better at D&D?
Do you mean mechanically or do you mean like roleplay wise?
Or overall.
Both.
Or overall? Okay.
Overall, both.
For me, it's definitely like, because I said, like, I didn't grow up with role play as much. I didn't do all the D&D and stuff. So for me, it was actually pretty intimidating the first time I was on West Marches. I knew it was going to be fun to do just because at the center of it was role play and I get to be this crazy senile wizard. That's great. But actually learning the mechanics and the tactics of 5e and how experienced role players handle it, and just like over that show and Court of Swords, the entirety of that, like now I'm just starting to see the fruits of like actually paying attention to like all the different stuff that JP does or Adam is doing as a GM and different counter moves that I can do. So it's super rewarding for me. Yes, absolutely. I'm constantly
Danger
watching.
sense.
Danger sense, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
I now know that can save me from anything, and I wouldn't have known that without.
Max
No.
is playing a different version of D&D than the rest of us.
It's a better version. No. I'm constantly watching how people, and even new people that come into the show, like people that I, never would have thought I'd role play with, or that's part of the beauty of, I think, the fourth rotating guest spot is that somebody always brings in something new and they play a different way, and the beauty of role play in general, right? Is just seeing how people play these kind of really well-grooved character types and how they make it their own and how they might do some different tactics and stuff that still work within the rule set that you didn't think of. So I'm constantly learning from my own mistakes and also just from watching other people and how they play.
Cool.
I think for me, Higgins is probably the character where I like truly started role playing. Everything before that was just kind of fart jokes with every character basically. And I guess Court of Swords probably mechanically was the one where I had to like sit down and truly learn the rules. And probably Mirrorshades. It took like 30 episodes, and I think we did 31 episodes to actually learn Shadowrun.
There's a moment.
Shadowrun?
You could
Yeah.
see me lose my shit in like one of the last episodes where JP's like, all right, hit him with my gun. So that means I do this much damage? And I was just like, hallelujah.
Yeah.
Get it
Shadowrun.
out.
Shadowrun First Edition is a motherfucker for rules, so
That's true.
that one was pretty tough to learn for sure. But I think Court of Swords is every week. We're learning the specifics of everything. Sometimes learning it all over again because we've taken a long enough break. But
Yeah.
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 For you have a question or an answer?
What was the original question? I was having trouble hearing.
Anything in terms of when you're on roleplay, in terms of like expanding your ability to roleplay or mechanically learning the systems? Any specific thing?
I would say just from my first time doing it online, it was weird to role play with no one else in the room with me. So learning how and when to use like the camera, like look into the camera and stuff like that, rather than like, because most of my time I'm watching the Skype with all of everybody's faces on it.
Right.
And then I realized like, they can't. I'm not looking at them if I do this. If I'm looking at the Skype. If I want to look at their eyes, I look at the camera. So, like shit like that, definitely. But yeah, I guess I don't want to take it anymore.
I think you do that the most from anybody that I've seen that's been on the show, is staring at the camera and having that. Morgan Webb did that too a bit. She stared at the camera a lot, and I always think it's interesting to see the people that make that connection.
I'll do it with certain characters, but not
yeah.
others. Yeah. It's a body language.
Yeah.
I think the
sure.
best.
Well,
thing
and I
I've-
learned that from Adam, pretty much.
Yeah.
Right, I think the best thing I've learned from you in terms of stuff that you do on the show is you don't laugh or smile after everything you say. I think that's a way that people deal with the awkwardness of saying you're a fucking dwarf and like having to bury a dead person that doesn't exist except in your mind.
Or speaking in the vernacular.
Yeah.
Like, well met, good sir. You know,
Yeah.
like, fucking own it. That's not funny.
Everyone kind of
Own that.
smiles. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've learned from you a lot of times you just don't react. It's just normal stuff that you're saying.
Yep.
That's important. It really is important for everyone on the show to do that, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
for the
you.
question.
Thank you.
Business question for JP.
Okay.
Balance of power. Between the one shot and the series finally being made, there was like this period of time where you were having back and forth discussions with LucasArts or Fantasy Flight. I was wondering if you could go into any detail what those conversations were like and what you had to go through in order to get the show up and running.
You mean to use like the Star Wars IP?
Yeah.
We kind of just did it. At the end of the day, like, they're not going to be too protective of a show that gets a couple thousand views on the internet. I don't even think any of those VODs got claimed. They're probably claimed now because YouTube just joked.
everything
But
is, yeah.
yeah. We tried to do that right, and I tried to contact the right people. And at the end of the day, them actually responding to us would make it harder for us to do the show in the first place. So the idea was kind of just do it, and if you get in trouble, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask in the first place. And so that's kind of how that happened. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for the question.
Hey, you didn't say no more Swan Song, and
Oh shit, that's right.
yeah,
We ended that show twice though. It can't
I
go
know.
3 times.
How many more times do you want me to do this?
yeah, a lot. I was talking to Adam about this earlier, and this is where the question came from. But how important is the theme of the storyline or whatever, or the universe, to you when you're deciding to put on a new show? Because I tend to lean more towards spacey stuff and a little Court of Swords and not so much other stuff.
Right.
And you need to do more made RPG.
I think we try to keep a balance. Like we want to have like one fantasy, one fantasy, one space, and I think that kind of covers most of the bases. I think the idea of having like a comedy show or a show rooted in comedy, rather than a show rooted in kind of drama, which was Swan Song, but it also was comedic in a sense, is important. But yeah, I think the two big ones are normal fantasy stuff for those people and space for those people.
Part of it too, I think, is casting the correct people for the kind of show we
Yeah,
want to
that's
do.
true.
Like Swan Song would have been a very, very different show if it were like Jeff, Day 9, and Jesse Cox, right? Like completely different environment.
Totally.
We wouldn't put those things together for that thing. But to JP's point, yeah, like choosing a balance and trying to balance complexity of the system too. Because if we were doing balance of power and something equally complex at the same time, I think it'd be very overwhelming, which is why we're doing kind of mechanically focused 5e and making that a point of the show, and also Nebula Jazz, which is very, very light on rules.
Totally. Yeah, I think the other thing too, we were talking about like the amount of content that we put out. 2 shows seems kind of like the happy place right now in terms of just weekly 8 hours is good. There was a time where we were doing like 4 shows a week. And I don't know how the community watched that stuff because that's 16
crazy.
hours of content, which most people watch like an hour of television, if that, every week.
Well, I think that's the thing
it's
that's
kinda nutty
That's the
having
thing
that
that's
many
pretty
shows.
different about the way RollPlay operates versus like say a Critical Role or a Acquisitions Incorporated, where we have multiple. We're more like a channel and less like an individual show.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, anytime I've ever watched roleplay, like VODs or whatever, or roleplay when it's live, I don't feel the necessity to chat.
Right.
It's something that you can leave on for hours.
That's true.
And just play another game or whatever and just have it, pipe
Yeah,
it in on
I do know a
screen.
lot of people that binge it. Or last night we met a lot of people that just listened to the MP3 for, plane rides and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's always something we're learning and working on, trying to figure out what works best. But
As
yeah.
far as new shows, Star Trek. Do a Star Trek show. One shot.
Really jonesing for that Star Trek.
A little
Max,
TNG era.
Max really wants us to do a Star Trek.
If you don't contact me, Mr. Moogle.
Yeah, we'll see.
Thanks.
See. Yeah, thank you for the question.
All right, the question for JP: what is the hardest show to sit behind the scenes during?
Maybe Nebula Jazz. Only because I kind of played that show with Swan Song, and he let me kind of do whatever I wanted for the most part. And that show actually rewards doing whatever you want to do for the most part. Mask would have been a lot of fun. I mean, pretty much any show that we put on that I'm not on, I'm always one to jump in at some part.
I really like it when you shit post in Roll20 when we're trying to play.
That's also a lot of fun. Yeah, that's definitely a lot of fun, especially if someone's rolling really bad.
Yeah, we'll be in the middle of doing something and I'll hear the little like whoop, and
Well,
I'm like,
and
oh,
I-
here comes JP.
I try to make that too, like not to break immersion. So
Yeah.
I'll like make a name up that makes sense in the show, and add that in there. But yeah, I guess off the top of my head, probably Nebula Jazz. I think that'd be super fun to jump into for sure.
Well, maybe we'll have you as a guest one day.
I
my
know.
producer's a real hard ass about this,
I know.
so
We'll see.
we'll ask.
It'd be fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
So this is more of a question with, so sorry, it's weird hearing my voice twice. But it's more of a question with the R&D kind of being taken over by the guest GMs.
Yeah.
Is there, JP, you've already run one game, but is there one that Max or Zeke that really want to run?
Well, that's kind of the fun thing. I think Jesse most recently just like tweeted us like, "Hey, I want to run a game," and seeing that type of stuff is really cool.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
So I think I'm always open. Like, if Zeke wants to run a game, or if, heaven forbid, Max wants to run a game, like,
Why do you say that?
I would love for you to run a 5e game, just so you can learn the rules for once and all.
I've gotten a lot better, all right?
Yeah, I know.
Listen, let me tell you, it's going to be a modified version where Danger Sense is way overpowered.
Look, you can just do the way Krendor runs games and just roll dice for no reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I honestly believe that. I've actually run a game once on a stage for one of the Insomnia events, and that was a little stressful. And I did. I just I don't know. I don't have a module in place. Here's a roll.
Can
one.
I just take a second and talk about Daikea? So, listen, fuckers. When I screw up a roll, y'all are directly up my ass. But when Krendor is like, oh, he's got like 30 dexterity, you can't catch him, too bad. You let him get away with that horseshit, and that's not fair. That's not fair, chat. You're mean.
Yeah, Daikea is kind of a shit
I just
show.
need to get that off my shoulders.
Does it feel good?
Feels good. I feel better now. Thank you.
But yeah, to answer your question, I would love if any of the players ever want to run a game, and they all know how to contact me. So if you're listening to this for some reason, yeah, feel free. Jesse tweeted at us, and now we're going to be doing a show in December with him DMing. So yeah, and I'm really looking forward to that game for sure. He had an idea and kind of gave me and Adam what he wants to do, and Adam will fix him up with saying, we're going to play this game, and that makes most sense for you, and we'll go from there. It's a lot of fun for sure.
Thanks for the question.
Thanks for the question.
Sorry, I can't hear myself over the thing. Speaking of Krendor, and I know Adam, you mentioned Caitlin. In terms of just in general role playing over the course of your lives in general, either off camera or for the camera, who's been the biggest wild card that you guys have dealt with or just played with, and like in terms of how fun they've acted or what they've done to either screw up a show or just take it in a completely weird direction? I
don't know if screw up a show has ever really occurred.
JP. Did JP use the answer to that question?
I'm pretty good at that.
There's moments where I can see your interest in the scene waning, and I'm like, oh, here he goes. He's lighting the fire now.
Yeah. Krendor really fucked up Saga of the Icelanders. That show was supposed to be so serious, and he played a witch that could see the future and would just say the most absurd shit, and the players were like, well, fuck, I gotta roll with this now. I think that was probably, that show was just weird. That's a weird show to watch, for sure. And Jesse was there kind of rooting him on, but also fuck, I don't want to do this now. It'd be weird. But yeah, for DMing purposes, at least for my interest, Eben Katz was Katz was kind of like the, I don't want to say typical, but the D&D player that didn't know what the limits were to role playing, and so he would just say like, I want to punch this guy, but like I want to punch him like I'm Goku, and see how that works. And I just was like, all right, I guess we'll try to figure something out. And of course he crits the roll, so yeah, okay, describe how you do that. And he was kind of that character or that player where it's just always creates insanity around him, at least that I've had to deal with. But Caitlin's probably the answer, and maybe me. I can't speak for myself.
They're different. I think that for Mirrorshades and to a lesser extent Balance of Power, the way that Caitlin approaches problems as a role player is just very different from what I'm used to, and that I love that. Like that's my favorite thing about playing games with her. But I think everybody that I've played with has surprised me once or twice with the way that they've approached a problem, and that's what's so fun about it, right? Like, I will come up with some stuff that's going on, and then watching the players, like instead of opening the door, they'll like take the hinges off and throw the door out the window, or they'll punch a hole in the wall next to the door. I'm like, the door's right there.
Yeah,
it's fine, whatever.
Yeah,
that stuff's fun. I love it. So I want more chaos from my players.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right, let's see if we can hear Eugene through the bag.
Oh, no, not
I don't
like
think it's
that.
going to work.
Probably have to lift the bag, maybe.
Hi. Oh,
yeah.
that's
Oh, there we
really
go.
loud. Hi. So first of all, I wanted to thank you guys. I would not have gotten into roleplay at all, D&D, Fate Accelerated, anything if not for you guys. So thank you.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
And so for all the amazing shows that you've run, I know there's one system that Adam particularly likes. Is there any chance we might see a role-play Burning Wheel game?
I do love the Burning Wheel.
Oh yeah. Zeke really wants to play that. Every time it's brought up, he's like, "I want to play." So
he did an elevator pitch. Adam did an elevator pitch on me that was like a half an hour long.
It's like a Jedi mind trick.
And he just immediately turned me on, and then he just had to let me down and be like, "Oh, that's probably not going to happen for you."
So
God damn it.
So the thing about when you have something that you like really really love, there is an urge to share it with people, but there is that danger where if you're like, here's the thing I love, and they're like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
And you're like, fuck. So I think what for me it's about finding the right people. It's honestly it's just like casting any other show. It's the right people who are able to contribute and to commit in the right way and to play the way that makes the game and the other players look good. It is on my to-do list, but there needs to be a space for it in a lot of different ways. And so I'm being gentle with myself in not just being like I'm going to play it at the first opportunity. I want to make it work.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts on the matter. I'm starting to assemble the list, but
yeah, it's definitely one we've been thinking about for a while. But a lot of it just comes down to like timing and kind of like you said, we've definitely been in positions where you're running like 6 shows a week or 6 shows in that specific week, and it's just too much.
Yeah.
And plus you kind of run a Burning Wheel game on Roll20 already.
I've got a Burning Wheel game that I'm running on Roll20 app, and it's really good. But with those folks, it's the right game for them.
Yeah.
So once we have the space for it on RollPlay, it's a thing I think will happen. But the list of games I want to play is very long. Burning Wheel is just one of many.
Yeah. We've definitely got a couple ideas in terms of what we want to do once we finish up with Nebula Jazz and go from there. But yeah, we'll wait till we're ready to announce that stuff for sure.
Cool. All right, I think we got time for one more. I see the
Thank you, Eugene.
Timer counting down. Thank you, handsome space boy.
Hi. A question for Adam. How does accounting for the audience of a show on Twitch change the style of your GMing when you're running a show?
The chat as a whole has a role in the way that I think about games, right? Like I'm GMing for usually 4 players. The game itself has an influence on the narrative through when it kicks in and what its mechanics do. And then chat as an entity, it actually does really matter to me. I want to make sure that the things I'm describing you're going to be able to understand, and the feedback that chat gives me both in the moment and especially after the show is hugely important in forming the narrative. Swan Song was all about that post-game kind of feedback. I think about it like crazy. It's totally changed how I GM.
Yeah, we've got some ideas in terms of how we want to incorporate chat and a larger thing, the community, into kind of changing stuff in the actual show itself. There's a bunch of other, Hyper RPG does that a little bit right now in terms of active things in the show. We kind of want to take a more passive approach, but definitely have them affect the show in a way. But that's down the line, so when we get there, we'll get there. But yeah. Cool. Thank you for the question.
Looks like we're out of time. Thank you so much for coming, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.